broadcasting from the Unshackled Studios in Melbourne. This is WilmsFront, brought to you by theunshackled.net. Now here's Tim Wilms.
Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of WilmsFront. Sorry for the false start, I had to change internet connections, but welcome. The date is Wednesday the 12th of February 2020. It is just past 7 p.m. here in Melbourne. We are live on the Tim Wilms YouTube channel as well as the Tim Wilms D-Live channel. Please join in the live chat so you can support WilmsFront on D-Live by sending through Lemons, which is the cryptocurrency of the platform. And if you're on YouTube, I've also got Entropy up. I'm just going to put the link into the live chat so you can join us there and you can ask either myself or my guest a question tonight, or you can send us through a super chat. So I've just put that in the chat now. But on to tonight's guest, and I'm joined in the studio by a very proud Australian who has a fascinating life story. Pastor Daniel Nalliah, welcome.
Thank you, Tim. It's good to be on your program.
Now you have, as I said, your country of origin is Sri Lanka, which is a multi-ethnic and multi-religious state. In your youth, you converted to Christianity and dedicated your life to serving the Lord and became a integral part of the Sri Lankan Christian community. Then, in 1995, you moved with your young family to Saudi Arabia, which is governed by sharia law. And your time in Saudi Arabia is documented in your book, Worship Under the Sword. And you've also got another book, more recent one, 21st Century Culture, War in the West. And in 1997, you migrated with your young family to Australia. You founded the Catch the Fire Ministries, now called Reformation Harvest Fire Ministries in Melbourne's southeast in the city of Casey. You're also a leader of Rise Up Australia, which is a Christian conservative patriotic advocacy group, which was a political party from 2010 to 2019. You were one of the first targets of Victoria's Racial and Religious Tolerance Act 2001. In 2002, the Islamic Council of Victoria took you and another pastor, Daniel Scott, to the Victorian Civil and Administrative Tribunal and Equal Opportunity Commission under Section 8 of the Act. And I've just got it up here, which is religious vilification unlawful, which is a civil provision. VCAT found the pair of you guilty, and they wanted you to take out apology because it was your belief about Islam and you were quoting the Quran. Of course, you were not going to apologize for that. The legal battle lasted 5 years, but it eventually got overturned in the Supreme Court of Victoria. You and Rise Up Australia participated in the Reclaim Australia movement in 2015 and also the United Patriots Front. And you also recently you have a honorary doctorate of divinity from St. Thomas Christian University in Jacksonville, Florida. So you can also be called Dr. Daniel Nalliah.
Yes.
Now, obviously, you've done quite a lot in life, crisscrossed all across the world. But let's start with your country of origin, Sri Lanka. But I want to fast forward before we go back. And we're all quite shocked in Australia with the Easter Sunday Islamic terror attack in Sri Lanka targeting the Christian community, because most of us in Australia know that Sri Lanka is made up primarily of two ethnic groups, the Sinhalese, who are Buddhists, and Tamils, who are predominantly Hindu. You're a Tamil, but a Christian.
That's right.
And obviously there was the 26-year civil war that the Tamil Tigers launched, and so this seemed very shocking in more ways than one. Given you grew up in the nation, can you explain, obviously you're neither Buddhist nor Hindu, but just why the Christian community would have been targeted, and did you face any persecution in Sri Lanka?
Well, to set the record straight, I grew up in Sri Lanka. I didn't convert to Christianity. I was born a Christian. And 70% of Sri Lankans are Buddhist, 20% are Hindu. Now the Buddhists speak the language called Sinhalese, majority of them, all of them. And the Hindus speak Tamil. But then you get the Tamil-speaking Christians and Sinhalese-speaking Christians also. So Christians become the group which actually unifies the nation in a sense. So I lived there I left Sri Lanka in 1995 and due to the civil war, 2 terrorist uprisings, one southern terrorist uprising which was communist-led, the northern terrorist uprising which is the Tamil Tigers. It was not good because a lot of people died. A lot of my friends died also.
Yeah, because it lasted 26 years.
That's right,
There were
that's right.
civilian deaths, assassinations. Most Australians, they probably know where Sri Lanka is on the map because we play them in cricket
That's right.
a lot of the time, but wouldn't have obviously realised the gravity of the civil war, and that it was 26 years, which is a long time.
So Sri Lanka was known as Ceylon in the past. Sri Lanka has a very long history, back into 10th century. And even, for example, the temple in Jerusalem, King Solomon, when he built the temple, gemstones were brought from Sri Lanka, which was then known as Offa, an island. So it has a long history. But unfortunately, the ethnic violence in Sri Lanka led to this civil war, which ended up in what it is. But thank God today, things are settled down. The economy is beginning to boom. Tourism is getting good. I have my mother and my sister live there, still there in Sri Lanka, so I do go to Sri Lanka off and on. But yeah, so the Easter Sunday bombing was a shock to everyone because we have never had Muslim terrorism in Sri Lanka until that Easter Sunday attack. But I did predict this. In 1985, I told my friends, I said, the growth of Islam is really fast in Sri Lanka because a man can marry 4 wives and have many children. And that was a advantage point for the Muslims. And I did predict something will happen if you don't manage the country properly. Unfortunately, it happened. So,
And unfortunately, it was soon forgotten because it was a month after the Christchurch massacre in New Zealand, where people such as yourself and myself were blamed because of our rhetoric for that, and that was drummed into us for months. But this was a much more horrific and shocking.
it was senseless. It was just inhumane. I just don't know how can someone go and kill innocent children and people who are worshipping in a church. So it was terrible. But anyway, we have come through that and we're moving forward now. But yeah.
Now, as I said, you moved to Saudi Arabia in 1995 to work with the underground church because it's basically a theocracy, that nation governed by sharia law. You've spoken about in your videos that Christian prayer was illegal, and it would seem to me that going to Saudi Arabia as a practicing Christian and wanting to help Christians there, that it'd be sort of moving to North Korea. Why did you do it?
Well, actually, I didn't move to Saudi Arabia to practice Christianity. I was working for a company called American President Lines in Sri Lanka. And I got a transfer to work in Saudi Arabia. So my job took me to Saudi Arabia. When I went there, I did tell my managing director, who was an American in Sri Lanka, when he offered me the job. I said, mate, that's not my job. He said, you get salary will be 4 times what you're getting right now, and you won't be taxed. So that sounded really interesting. So I said, okay, let's give it a go. When I went there, within the first week, I was already underground at the church. And then got heavily involved with the underground church there. And the rest is history because we baptized people in the Red Sea. I used to smuggle Bibles with the US CIA, which is shocking, everyone's surprised. But it was a very interesting time. It was a challenging time, but a very interesting time. Because I was made to watch 3 people getting beheaded.
Yeah, and that would would be to actually see it. We hear about it and we think it's barbaric, but to actually see it, and it's not a, or any type of execution is disturbing, but to chop someone's head off, and I don't want to get too graphic there, that would be horrible.
Yeah. Well, I was actually driving my car. I was going in to see one of my customers. And suddenly at machine gun point, the police came on the streets, stopped all the vehicles. And it's called the Chop Chop Square. Every Friday they chop heads or chop hands. And I knew that this was going to happen. They said, I have to go and watch it. I said, why? They said, we want everyone to watch it because so that you would not do any crimes in this country. I thought to myself, man, I'm smuggling Bibles. If I get caught, what's going to happen to me? So anyway, when I watched this and it was horrible, I just thought, no, it's... But what shocked me most was when the beheading took place, there was 2,000 people watching this, approximately 2,000 people. A lot of fathers with their young sons were there. And they all shouted, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. And I was like, why are you celebrating? And then I asked someone, why are they celebrating? I said, because now they cut the heads off, these guys are going to heaven now. I thought, this is crazy what's happening. So yeah, that was my life in Saudi Arabia. I had 20 soldiers come into my house at 1 o'clock in the morning. They must bang on my door. And I've been told that if someone bangs on your door at 1 o'clock in the morning, that means house is getting raided. I used to bring the Bibles into my house and distribute it across the country. So I had 400 Bibles on my dining room table that night. My wife and children were in the house also. I heard the bang on the door. I came running. I looked through the peephole, spy hole, and I realized that there was 20 soldiers outside my door. Some were carrying machine guns. All the guns were pointing at my door. And I thought that was my end. My legs became like jelly. I couldn't stand. I fell on my knees. And I thought, today my wife is going to be raped and killed. My children are going to be taken away from me. I'm going to be executed on Friday. That's what went through my mind. Because when the door is open, 400 Bibles on the table, it's enough ammunition to arrest me. Anyway, I fell on my knees and I lifted my hands up to the skies, and by the way I could, and I shouted, God, where are you? Can't you see me? Please help me. And I heard these words come to me very clearly. My blood is on your doorpost. No one who is not authorized can enter your house. Open the door, stand in my name. Cast these demons to leave. They leave. So it was something out of the box for me, to do that. Of course, I used to dealing with various other situations. Not in a place where 20 soldiers with 8 machine guns pointing at your door. So I opened the door. When I opened the door, the commander of the unit was there, standing in front. He was banging my door. Had I not opened the door, they would have broken the door. They take 2 steps into my house, 400 Bibles on my lounge room table. I remember standing and I looked in the eyes of the commander and I started saying, in the name of Jesus, get out. You can't touch me, my family. Not audibly, but inside me. The commander looked at me. He didn't even look at the platoon which had come with him. He did this 3 to 4 times. At that point I had these words coming through my mind. For I have confused the enemy and he can't remember why he has come to your house. I wanted to say yes, but I thought I can't make a noise. I just kept looking. Then he said, Habibi, Kama. In Arabic he said, mate, give me your identification. I gave it to him. He looked at it. He looked at me. He looked at the platoon. The 20 soldiers did not understand why this guy is not going in. But I realized God has confused his mind. He was like, he couldn't ask, he was like lost. He did 3 times, he looked at me, he looked at the unit, gave my identification back, and he said, Shukran Habibi. In Arabic that means, thanks mate. I said, Afran Habibi. In Arabic that means, don't mention mate. He turned around and looked at the soldiers and he said, Yalla, go. And all of them left, not one entered my house. I'm still alive to tell the story.
All because, and this near-death experience happened because you had Bibles hidden in your house,
That's right.
which it shows, well, to use a milder term, it just seems so absurd that you've got, well, it's a book that's been around for over 2,000 years in this country.
That's
because
right.
you're spreading this book, then you're an enemy of the state. And
Yeah, Christian worship is a criminal offense in Saudi Arabia. If you get caught worshipping Jesus in your home, you're arrested and get 70 lashes. If you convert a Muslim, you'll be beheaded.
the thing that probably infuriates me to this day is that Saudi Arabia is seen as a great ally of the West, and Donald Trump, he's done a lot of good, but he went to Saudi Arabia. He had the necklace put on there. There doesn't seem to be many Western leaders who, because it hasn't progressed much. The debate is, should women allowed to drive? That's how much their civilization has progressed.
I must say this though. I was very skeptical also when I was seeing everything happening. But right now I'm a bit more optimistic, because Prince Salman, he's a moderate guy. He seems to be genuinely want to make an effort to change things around. And President Trump, he's a real dealer. You can't go through his ears. They know that. They're scared of him. So I think Trump is the right thing just happened to America. But I think I know. Now Saudi Arabia is falling in line. Now Christians can worship in their homes. They're not arrested anymore, which is good news. Actually, I was involved in getting that green light from the king, then it was King Fahad, back in 1997. Things are turning around. Even Saudi Arabia Prince Salman is going to meet Benjamin Netanyahu before 2nd of March, before the Israeli elections in Egypt. So there's a change coming, which is a good change. And I hope and pray that it will work out well.
I'm probably a bit more skeptical than you, but you're the one that lived there and saw how
Yes.
things were. So I'll certainly take your analysis on board as well. Now, in 1997, we should talk about before you came to Australia. There was you lobbied for. It was passed under the presidency of Bill Clinton. It was the International Religious Freedom Act, and this was in response to what was happening in partly in Saudi Arabia with the arrest of Christians.
What happened was 31 Christians were arrested in 1998, early 1998. And my phones rang and they asked me whether I can go and lobby with the US Congress, because I was a spokesman for the underground church at the US Congress. So I went to the US and I spent 30 days in the meeting with congressmen. Interestingly, Senator Brownback, Congressman Frank Wolf, Senator Alan Spector, who died some months ago. All of them helped me. And during the time when 31 Christians were arrested for preaching Jesus in Saudi Arabia, and they were in prison, some of them were going to be executed, some of them were going to be long-term jail terms, because they distributed Bibles and they got caught. So that's a criminal offense to distribute Bibles. At the same time that I was in the US, the Christians were arrested in Saudi Arabia. The Saudi Arabian, one of the princes in the US, opening a new mosque in Los Angeles. So I was able to really thank the people across the nation of America. Thank God for the Americans who stand with the persecuted church. We lobbied from, television stations and radio stations all worked together. And we were able to get all 31 Christians out of prison. But then we introduced a bill, which I was very involved in, called the Religious Act, or the Freedom from Religious Persecution Act, 98. And that passed in the US Congress in 98. I was personally involved in that.
It was, I'm just trying to look it up. I had it in my... I'll put it in the show notes page. This act, it was, to my knowledge, the International Religious Freedom Act, which That's a significant achievement or for you to play a part in that, and also help to free these Christians as well.
It was. I need to say this is very interesting, because when the legislation was drawn up by an organization called Hudson Institute, and I asked this company, they helped me out. They did work pro bono, the lawyers. We drafted the legislation, put it in the House of Reps. It got rejected in the House of Reps. So the House of Representatives brought it back and they said, it's got rejected, but we can't put it forward. I said, you started something, don't stop it now. So with a lot more activism in the US. We got it through the House of Reps, but in the Senate, it was not going to go through the Senate. Because Bill Clinton said, I will not pass this as it is. So I told the church there in America, I said, pray that God will do something supernatural, that you can get the bill passed. The answer to prayer was Monica Lewinsky. Because Monica Lewinsky's case got exposed during this very time when I was in the States. And Bill Clinton, the people who were going to impeach him, the ones who were involved in our bill, so he told them, bring the bill, I'll sign it for you to butter them up. And the bill got passed. So thank God for Monica Lewinsky.
That's a
Blessing in disguise.
Incredible twist of fate. The fact that his sin helped pass that bill.
That's right. And so the bill is. There was a guy called Robert Seipel who was appointed as the first ambassador at large for religious freedom. And currently, with Donald Trump's establishment of a religious freedom committee, further enhancing that, Senator Brownback was one of the people who I worked with. He's on that committee currently with President Trump.
Wow. Now, after your time in Saudi Arabia, you and your family migrated to Australia. Obviously, you're a very proud Australian now, but when you migrated, how much did you know? Obviously, Australia and Sri Lanka have the British colonial heritage and also cricket. But what was it like when you arrived? Because you built your new life here very quickly.
Yes, I think there was a survey done a while ago. If I'm correct, Sri Lankans, migrants from Sri Lanka into Australia, are considered to be the most adaptable people of all immigrants into Australia. We love Australia. We love the Australian nation. And when we play cricket, of course, sometimes we are not sure which side they are supporting. Someone asked me, Danny, who do you support in cricket? I said, I'm a winner anyway. If either side wins, I'm a winner.
I find with people who've migrated from another nation to Australia, and this question is asked, who do you support in sport? The Australians always want to back a winner, and so if you've got two nations, then you're going to back the winner, and more often than not, Australia does beat Sri Lanka.
That's right. So let's not talk about cricket, let's talk about something else. So anyway, 1997 we called Australia home. 1995 and 1996 twice I came to Australia on visits. Spent 1 month each time that I came here. And I fell in love with the country. I just love this land. And we just adapted into Australian way of life. I see myself as an Australian right now.
And you set up Catch the Fire Ministries, which is a church, and also the Rise Up Australia movement, which is, as it says on the website now, it's now a advocacy group, but it was always more of a community group, while Catch the Fire Ministries was the house of worship.
That's right. So in 1998 we set up Catch the Fire Ministries, and in 2000 we started a Rise Up Australia prayer movement across the country, which then established more than 100 prayer groups across the land, praying for Australia. When I came here, I was surprised, Tim, to see the naiveness of our fellow Aussies, of the nation, that lack of understanding of Islam. When I first came here, I was like, yes, multiculturalism is great, because I can get every rights that I want. But within 3 months, I realized it was not right. And I'll tell you why. I remember the president from America, I can't remember his name, he said this: don't ask what the country can do for you, do you do what you can do for your country?
John F. Kennedy.
That's right. This statement came to me and I thought, I'm in Australia, I must do what I can do for the country, not what the country can do for me. So my whole opinion about multiculturalism changed at that point. And from 2000 I started working for Australia, as Australian. To keep Australia Australian was my motto. So people go, what do you mean, you're from Sri Lanka? And I said, yeah, but I said, it's true that my ethnicity is Sri Lankan, but I'm Australian. I said, culture divides people. We can't let everyone in their own culture here, because according to Islamic culture, you can have 4 wives, you can have sharia law. I won't let that happen here, multiculturalism. No, we can't. Also, I remember in year 2000, I wrote this word multiculturalism on a piece of paper. And as I started writing it, I suddenly realized the first 9 letters of multiculturalism states multicult. In the word multiculturalism, there's a statement, multicult. I said multicult is not good for Australia. So I started campaigning against it. But of course, I was talking to people about Islam and people were like, no, they are good. I said, yeah, Muslims there are good Muslims, but they are not true Muslims. True Muslims can't be good Muslims. The Quran, for example, Buddhism, Hinduism and Christianity and Islam, the 4 major religions. I grew up with Hinduism and Buddhism in Sri Lanka. Now, Buddhists do get violent, but that's not the teaching of Buddha. Hindus get violent, that's not the teaching of Krishna. But Islam, Muhammad himself taught people to be violent. He carried out attacks. Muhammad administered the beheading of 600 people in Al-Qurayshi tribe in Mecca. So he was a murderer. He had 13 wives. His youngest wife was 9 years old, took her when she was 6. So I came in and I realized, the country is so naive. So when September 11th took place, I just returned from South Africa. I was speaking in South Africa. I done Cape Town, Port Elizabeth and Johannesburg. I arrived in Melbourne, came home. Then my wife came and told me, the Twin Towers have been attacked. I was like, what? Is it a movie? I said, no, it's real. I was shocked. So was every nation shocked. So at this point, many of us contacted me and they said, can you tell us, is Islam violent or is it peaceful? I said, Islam is violent. There are good Muslims, but Islam is violent. So they said, can you teach me about Islam? So we did a seminar, 9th April year 2002. It was 5 months after the suicide bombing. In the seminar we taught Islam, the Quran, and there had 300 people come there. 3 or 3 converts to Islam were sent as spies by the Islamic Council of Victoria. There's a stupid law called the Racial and Religious Vilification Law was passed.
Racial and Religious Tolerance Act,
Right.
which just put on the screen before the Section 8, which
That's right.
the Islamic Council of Victoria, because it's a civil provision, there's got to be a complainant, and it was interesting that it was passed in 2001, and then less than a year after, these 3 people come to get offended. It's basically like what happened in East Germany, where if you were having a conversation in a pub, there could be a Stasi agent there report you.
Yeah, so what happened was, this law is so bad, it was, the Westminster's Court said you're innocent until you're proven guilty. But under this law, you're guilty until you prove yourself innocent. So the complainant can say, for example, I'm in a cafe, having a cuppa, and I tell you, hey Tim, I believe Jesus is the only way to heaven. Now, there can be another person at another table, not a party to our conversation, take offense and sue me. How do you measure feelings? He says, I am hurt. So it's taken. Now, it's not his duty. He does not have to prove me guilty. I have to prove myself innocent. So that's what happened to us. We were taken to court in 2002. The law was implemented in January 2002. April 2002, we were sued. Went to the Equal Opportunity Commission. They spent 7 hours and 40 minutes trying to get me to apologize to the Muslims, saying that I did something wrong. I said, no, I will not apologize for speaking the truth. And so this Islamic Council's president, I remember him sitting in front of me in the table that day, I said, I'll make you pay thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars if you don't apologize. I said, mate, this is not Saudi Arabia, this is Australia. You come here, you become Australian. Don't try to change this country where you have come from. I will not give in to that nonsense. Let's go. They say, they're going to take you to court, let's take us to court. So then it went into tribunal. And in the tribunal, the case was a crazy court case. Because this law was passed in Victoria, and it was the first state to implement the law. So we were the first to be sued under the law. The law was originated from the UN, and that's how it came in. So ours was a test case. So we went through court hearings, totally 5 years of court hearings, 2002 to 2007. 2004, the tribunal found me guilty under the law. And the tribunal asked me to apologize to the Muslims, and then put out paper advertisement, spending $80,000, and never to be involved in conduct such as this again. In other words, I can't talk about Islam in future if I accepted the tribunal verdict.
Not at all?
Not at all. So I said, I'm not going to go into this. I remember coming out of the courtroom. Something interesting happened in the courtroom, I must tell you this. When the judge gave the decision, well, in the courtroom, there were some interesting conversations. The Islamic Council's barrister told the judge, Your Honor, this man is offending the Muslims. He's made this statement. I said, Your Honor, the statement she's referring to is a direct quote from the Quran. Then I said, Your Honor, if the Quran is offending them, then we need to ban the Quran in Australia. She said then, Your Honor, under this new law, truth is not a defense. Truth is not a defense. So in other words, reading from the Quran, they say they offended. That was not a defense. So anyway, the court case went through the trial. So the judge came and he gave the decision. When he bowed down, he left. There's a big noise at the back of the courtroom. The whole courtroom door came off the hinge and it fell into the courtroom. And I don't know if anyone understands what it is. But for me as a Christian, it was like a sign from God, saying no door is going to stop you from doing what I'm going to do in this country. I came out and the media was there. They said, what's happened? I said, well, we're going to take it to Supreme Court. I'm going to stop here. They said, but I'm going to apologize. I said, no, I will not apologize. For speaking the truth, I will not apologize. I'll go to prison. So the next day's newspaper front page said, Pastor is going to go to prison. Fighting for free speech. Our defense, we fought on freedom of speech. Supreme Court, we appealed the case, and in Supreme Court we won the case in 2007. So thank God that we won the case, because today this case, our case was the first case. It's been used as a defense, set of precedents for 183 cases around the world. So we thank God that we were able to stand. We spent $600,000. 1.5 million was pro bono work done also by the lawyers. So totally it cost us $2.1 million, the case.
That's not a lot of people have that too. Well, obviously you've had your congregation following, and there was also a lot of other people who thought this is wrong. That
I must tell you this. I thank the Australian people. The Aussies got behind me. They realized that this was a major cause that I was fighting for. And I had people whom I never spoken to, Buddhists and Hindus, who come into my office and give me donations. So I really appreciate the people of our nation. They rallied behind me. Well, I was under severe death threats. I got several death threats. I got threats to be, my house was They threatened to bomb my house, firebomb my house and my office. They threatened to kidnap my children from school. All saying, back off, don't take this case forward. I said, I will not stop. Started something, we're going to stand and fight for the freedom of our country. Won the case, and then I had a call. There was a call from Prime Minister John Howard's office, former Prime Minister. The secretary said, my secretary, Prime Minister wants Pastor Daniel to come to Parliament. So I went there and I met with him. And officially he thanked me on behalf of the country. And he said, thank you, Pastor Daniel. You have not fought this case for yourself, you fought it for the whole country. Our sons and daughters will benefit out of your case right now. So I really appreciate that.
That would have been a touching moment, but
Very touching
that
moment.
was back in 2007, and the state of free speech, it hasn't improved since then. It's got worse in certain areas, and the Racial and Religious Tolerance Act Victoria is still in place and was used again, a different section 25(2) against the Bendigo three members of the United Patriots Front, Blair Cottrell, Neil Erickson and Christopher Shortis, for doing the mock beheading outside the Bendigo City Council building as part of their activism against the application for the Bendigo Mosque, which you and Rise Up Australia participated and spoke at those rallies as well. I sat in on Blair Cottrell's County Court appeal at the end of last year, and he lost that appeal, but it was quite eye-opening sitting through that. Went for 4 days, the trial, and the State Attorney General's representative and Department of Public Prosecution went on that they went through all the preambles about why this act was introduced, and that it was because we are a multicultural society, we're going to legislate it. And I remember when Blair Cottrell, he came out of court, he said multiculturalism is not just a concept or a buzz phrase, it's the law.
Yeah. So, I mean, our court case certainly did help a lot of other cases. I know that for sure, because currently there are, I think there was recently 183 cases across the world where they were using our case as a defense to get people off litigation or vilification. So it was a huge sacrifice. It was a worthwhile price to be paid, and I thank God and thank the people of Australia for supporting us and helping us get through that time.
And it's obviously because it was a civil case between you and the Catch the Fire Ministry's Islamic Council of Victoria, and they thought it was going to be easy to basically get an apology out of you, but they would have felt it by the end of it in 2007. They would have gone through 5 years that, hey, shutting our critics up is not as easy as we thought.
Well, I think it was really good that the case was brought against us and not against someone who has not had experience on Islam. Because I lived in Saudi Arabia, I know what it is to stand up and not to bow down. So we are very pleased that it ended the way it ended.
Rise Up Australia became a political party in 2010. You'd previously stood as a candidate for the Family First Party in 2004 as a running mate
That's
of
right.
then elected Senator Steve Fielding. And I remember at the time the mainstream media, they picked at some of your Rise Up Australia brochures to say that this was a fundamentalist Christian party. So that was that was sort of your introduction into how the mainstream media were going to treat you over the years.
That's right. I mean, I think Donald Trump said the right thing, fake media. I really appreciate this. Today we can have a frank conversation like this. But most media, unfortunately, is fake media. Socialist left. Socialist left media does not want the truth to be said. They constantly... what I could understand is why are Aussies destroying their own country? It didn't make sense to me when I first came to Australia. I thought, man, what are these guys doing? We are so blessed in this country, and yet we don't see the blessing. We look at how we can destroy it by embracing all the different cultures. And I said, let me be very frank with you, Tim. I come from a background where I have gone through so much. Twice I was almost killed. My parents were almost burnt alive in 1983. And survival has been a fight for us. But here in Australia, people are born here. Every Aussie should go, every child should go at least once in a lifetime to third world country to understand how blessed we are here, how naive we are about people. Everyone does not think that way. So this is why when people immigrate into Australia, multiculturalism helps them set up their own little zones rather than integrating, they segregate. We can be multi-ethnic Australians, not multicultural Australians. My country of birth cannot be changed and my ethnicity is Sri Lankan. But I'm an Australian. Now, if you don't like what you see here, if you think your place where you come from is better than where you're coming to, then for God's sake, shut up, pack up and get out. Go back to where you came from. I'll drive you to the airport. Don't whinge here. If you're here, you say, thank God I'm here. I'm proud to be. If you're not proud to be an Australian, then you're sorry, you're not in the right country. What's this nonsense? We're cow down, bound down, doing everything for people to live in separate states. Now look at Europe. Europe is gone. Europe, sharia zones everywhere. France, Germany. In Germany, the German police can't go into certain zones because they're infidels. So Angela Merkel recruits Turkish police officers to come and work in Germany, in Muslim zones.
Wow.
So Muslim zones are looked after by Muslim Turks, police officers.
Yeah.
That's nonsense. You come here, live by our laws. We're not going to live by your laws. The Sharia law is a 6th century. It's a dead law. It's not a law. It's horrible for mankind. Women are put down. Women have no rights. All these women's rights groups, ML is listed, all of them. What on earth are you guys doing about women?
Yeah.
Comes to this, you have no voice.
Exactly.
Too scared. So this is the time. We as Australians, we need to stand together. We need to push this now. We have made a journey, have to continue the journey, and I'm ready for the fight.
Because multiculturalism has turned into basically that each ethnic cultural group that migrates to Australia now sets up their local enclave, and so where suburbs in Melbourne and Sydney are becoming just tribal bases, and obviously
That's right.
it's most prevalent with Islam. We don't have no-go areas, thankfully, but there are suburbs in Sydney which are predominantly Islamic. There are some which are predominantly Chinese. There's bilingual signs, and that's not what what we were told multiculturalism was supposed to be about. Multiculturalism is supposed to be you get the best of everything, not the best and the worst of everything.
Yeah. Multiculturalism is to destroy a Western society. Multiculturalism will kill the Western civilization. If you don't wake up, it's going to be too late. Thank God Tony Abbott, when he was Prime Minister, he asked me a question. 2013 elections, 3 of the Liberal Party leaders came to meet with us. And they asked me, why are you so opposed to multiculturalism? Is it good for you? I said, it's very good for me, but it's not good for the country. It's not about me, it's about the country's future. Don't try to pander to every group which comes here. We don't need to assimilate into where you come from. You need to assimilate into where you are coming to. You need to integrate into Australian life. See, what they're trying to do is they're trying to get the Aussies to integrate into people who come into the country. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So Tony Abbott, we told Tony Abbott, he said, our immigration department is a disaster. They asked us why. I said, because our immigration department is called Immigration and Multicultural Affairs in 2013. It was called Immigration and Multicultural Affairs. So what's wrong with that? I said, all processing of immigration of Muslims from Islamic countries into Australia when they are coming to live in Australia. Under multiculturalism, they came in their 4 wives and their children. But they cater to the culture. So no, it doesn't happen as it happens. It was on current affairs. It was on Inside, SBS. They interviewed Muslims and they said, one guy was boasting, he said, I have 3 wives and I get enough Centrelink money that I don't need to work.
Yeah, those stories have popped up in the mainstream media from time to time,
So
and it's accommodated some of the time by Centrelink and other authorities, and you sort of think, how can that happen?
Centrelink, the guy who runs Centrelink was at that program and they asked him, is it true? He said, yes, it is true. They said, why is it true? Why do you pay them for 3 wives? He said, their culture is such they can have 3 wives. So we told the immigration, we told Tony Abbott, we said, you got to change the immigration department's name. The first thing he did was when he became Prime Minister, he changed the immigration department to Immigration and Border Protection. That happened because of us. So Rise Up Australia has played a very big role the last 10 years, shaping Australia to become what we want it to be. Still a journey ahead of us. Let's everyone join together, we can win this battle.
And we saw Islam in its most horrific form when Islamic State in 2014, 2015 took over Western Iraq and Eastern Syria and was encouraging Muslims in Western nations to carry out lone wolf attacks. There was a attempted stabbing of 2 police officers in Endeavour Hills in 2014, and then of course there was the Lint Cafe siege in the middle of Sydney by Man Monis, who came to Australia as an Iranian refugee, and a lot of these lone wolf attackers, they were refugees, and we'd take them in because their own nations were dangerous, and this is how we were being repaid. And obviously we're seeing the images from Iraq and Syria, people being beheaded, burnt alive, really most sickening things you could imagine. And even Al-Qaeda said this is too far for us. And in the beginning of 2015, that's when Reclaim Australia was born, which you and Rise Up Australia participated in. And immediately you were countered by we'll call them the extreme far left. Given that they call us extreme far right, I think it's fair to call them that. And I saw one of the early Reclaim Melbourne rallies. They were incredibly aggressive, the socialists. They even threw a bystander to the ground who wasn't even in the rally. He was just walking past. And as we know, these are people who, the socialists, they're predominantly white Australians. They don't even think that Australia couldn't have existed, but they're extremely confusing.
Yeah, the socialist left, the extreme socialist left, I don't think they have a brain. Their brains, unfortunately, I think they are warped. Because if you have any common sense, you will not be doing what you're doing. You're fighting against your own countrymen, causing division. When we had our rallies, Reclaim Australia rallies in Australia, in Canberra, in Bendigo, in Victoria, in Sydney, in Melbourne, in Sydney, the people who caused the trouble was not us. It was the left who came and attacked us. And the police knows that. When the police came around us, the horses were all facing outside, not inside. You know what I mean? The police officers were all facing away from us. They didn't we were no trouble looking in that direction. So
I've observed the same thing.
But I think we have gone through a journey. Australia is, thank God we have water around our country, which is a big security zone. We are an island nation, and we are also far away from the Middle East, which is great. So we are somewhat safe, but there's a lot more work to be done.
Well, Tony Abbott and Immigration Minister at the time, Scott Morrison, they successfully stopped the boats, though it has been highlighted that there's still a lot coming by plane. And obviously where immigration has been it's 190,000 per year reduced to 160,000. Obviously, you're an immigrant yourself. What do you think should be the ideal immigration rate? And should we often, it's our politicians say we should have a non-discriminatory immigration policy.
Circumstances are such, you got tough luck. You've got to do what's going to be best for our country right now. And we have, on Rise of Australia, as a party, we had our immigration policy was 10 years moratorium on Muslim immigration. If there was a family reunion visa, then we monitor every person who comes in. For 10 years, we said stop the intake of Muslims. But we don't know who is a good Muslim, who is a bad Muslim. But if there was family reunion, for example, if there's 4 members of a family here and one or two have to come in, that's okay. But in general, then also to see countries which people come into Australia, people are adaptable to Australian way of life. Get more people from those countries into Australia. And then the real refugees are in refugee camps. Most of these people who come and ask for refuge, try to come as refugees on the boats are economical refugees.
Oh, and queue jumpers as well.
That's right. So they're not really genuine, they're not fair income refugees. Yeah.
And in terms of the immigration level, because it's not just, obviously people are concerned about, it's termed changing demographics, because, and this is not due to multi-ethnic immigration, but the fact that multiculturalism is turning Australia into a nation of tribes. What should be the net immigration rate, do you believe?
I think we should. Currently it's 140,000, right? I think
160,000.
160,000. I think we should just stay there and just see what's best for the country overall. And I mean, we should bring in. I'm going to be very frank here. We need to look at getting Christian immigrants coming in. People who are going to help us in this country rather than people who are going to drain us, you know. And so, yeah.
Obviously, what factors into people's problem with high immigration as well is that our governments are not keeping up with infrastructure. We saw, well, when Daniel Andrews was first elected Premier, he cancelled the East-West link, a road that we still desperately need. Governments squabble over projects, federal and state have disagreements about where money should go, which doesn't help as well.
Yeah. I mean, there are so many different areas that you could look into. And I'm very pleased that Scott Morrison is the Prime Minister. I don't know what happened. If Bill Shorten won the election, he would have gone completely away from where we are heading right now. So,
well, the Australian people, they figured Bill Shorten out. I mean, he's one of the biggest fakes we've seen in Australian politics. I mean, you only I'm not sure if you remember, it was back in 2013. He abused an Asian pie shop lady in I think in North Carlton, and the security vision shows him putting his hand up, and you can see him yelling obscenities. And the Australian people, as a lot of politicians say, get it right. So yeah, we definitely dodged the bullet. It's okay, we're still on. It's the screen just rests for a bit.
yeah.
We've had a few technical hitches tonight, but we're getting through things. Now, going back to Reclaim Australia, obviously what broke out of that was the United Patriots Front, which wanted to be a more explicitly nationalistic group. And, well, Reclaim Australia was already called a racist group, but a lot of the mainstream media reports said United Patriots Front was made of neo-Nazis or former neo-Nazis, but you were happy to participate in those rallies and they were happy to have you there.
You know, to be honest with you, I was challenging the media. I said, guys, I have spent time with Blair Cottrell and all the other guys. We had meals together, spent time together. They come to our church also. If these guys are neo-Nazis, then they would not associate with me. So I'm not white. You get what I'm saying? So it was just it's just a media bundling of people into a place and making them look like actually the media creates criminals by isolating people like this. These are genuine Aussies who love their country, want to stand for their country and their future. They're immediately called neo-Nazi right-wing extremists. That's a cop-out. That's a lie. So we can't give into that. We got to. I was speaking to most of the leaders of Reclaim Australia. So telephone conference calls, and he's a guy who's not white on the phone telling these guys. When they say, the media thinks that we are racist, I said, if you're not a racist, if you're not a neo-Nazi, fear not, stand up and fight for your country. You know what? Aussies and people who are Anglo-Saxon Caucasian don't like to hear the word discrimination, racism. We want to run a mile away. So the opposition knows it has to use those words against us.
It's a good accusation
That's
because it's one of the worst things you can, racist, fascist, bigot
That's right.
or xenophobe.
So that's when you got to stand up and say, so what? If you think that I'm standing for my own country, it's called a racist, then so be it. I should say that. You take their fight off them. So I just want to challenge everyone. If you love your country and if you're standing for your country, do not get put down by this media or anyone saying that you're racist or far-right extremists.
And there were people who'd heard of your name and seen your writings or heard of you and not known your ethnicity and called you a white supremacist.
That's right. That's very funny. One of my first interviews was SBS radio, and the guy who interviewed me started off by saying, here's another political party which started off called Rise Up Australia. This is nothing but another Paul Hanson, One Nation, white supremacist, right-wing extremist group. I kept laughing on the telephone. I was on the phone doing the radio interview. I said, mate, you're a very poor interviewer, man. I said, you're not on your background work at all. He said, why are you saying that? I said, because I'm not white, mate. It's not about white. It's about Australians standing up for their country. So I said, how can I be a right-wing extremist, white supremacist when I'm not white? So it just cut the guy off.
And I remember it was the 2014 state election, which Rise Up stood candidates in. I saw when I travelled quite a bit back then, and I saw the billboards of Rise Up Australia had your party members behind you. It basically nearly had every ethnicity there. And I remember it was at the 2014 March for the Babies. Somebody vandalised the Rise Up van, which had your election posters on it,
Yes.
sprayed racist.
That's right. What's interesting is John Safran, who was a famous journalist. He did a documentary and he said, the Greens say that they are that they were fighting for rights of everyone. But he said in the Greens there's not one non-white person. Rise Up Australia is considered to be a racist right-wing group. But here there is all the different multi-ethnicity in this group. So we have about 40 different nationalities in our party and in our organization.
You've mentioned a few times now about you're frustrated with Australians who've been here for generations. Why aren't you standing up for your nation? And that's how successful the white guilt propagation has been on those Australians that they're taught in schools now that whites have always been the oppressors, putting
right.
down other people, and history is much more complicated than that. But yeah, they feel that some don't even believe that Australia should exist at all. They believe it still belongs to the Aborigines, but the settlement of Australia is, as I've said before, much more complicated than the Invasion Day crowd like to promote to us.
Let me put it this way. Sri Lanka, the British came to Sri Lanka at the same time they came to Australia. Sri Lanka, today Sri Lankans say this, the British should have never left Sri Lanka, they should have stayed in Sri Lanka. Had they stayed in Sri Lanka would be a first world country possibly right now. Honestly, in Australia, if not the Brits coming and developing this country, what do you think this country would be? Islamic?
Well, someone else would have
That's right.
discovered it.
And we would not, we, no, 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 I won't be here. We're here because it is Western society built on Judeo-Christian values are the best democracies you can have. And people enjoy the freedoms that you get on that.
And it wasn't just Sri Lanka that fought and lobbied for independence. Obviously, India, it occurred over half a century, their independence movement. But today, Indians don't hold a grudge against the British, white people. And we mentioned Sri Lanka and Australia share cricket, so does India and Pakistan. It's an English game. The English introduced it, but India, they're cricket mad. They love it.
I'm so grateful for the Brits coming in Australia. I say this, God had a plan for Australia. He brought the Brits here. Some of them were rejects of society. Some of them were criminals. But there was a lot of them who were not criminals, who were good people. And let's look at the first Brits who came here. They were not hardcore criminals. Most of them were a loaf of bread they robbed, worked as a prostitute because of the recession in England. Then they were dumped into boats and sent here. But God had a plan, a long-term plan for Australia, and that's been fulfilled. As a Christian minister, I say this. I thank God for Australia. Let's keep Australia Australian for generations to come.
Now, you voluntarily deregistered the Rise Up Australia Party after the 2019 federal election, and partly it was due to obviously the minor party field is it's still very crowded, and the fact that, as you've said before, you have faith in Scott Morrison. I did notice during the 2019 federal election, a lot of the Fraser-Anning Conservative National Party candidates were Rise Up candidates in the past. Scott Morland in the seat of Oxley in Queensland, and Paul Taylor, who was Fraser-Anning's running mate for the Senate.
Yes. Well, there are a couple of reasons that we decided to deregister the party. Number one was the fact that Scott Morrison won the election, and we felt that Scott Morrison will fulfill the agenda Rise Up Australia was trying to accomplish. Number two was Senate preferencing, change of Senate preferencing. There's no hope for minor parties to get into Parliament in a hurry. So it's better to get behind the major parties and do what we can do. But all in all, we still, Rise Up continues as a advocacy group right now, speaking into various other political parties, helping the right of politics really be strong, working with all the different political parties right now. So
Scott Morrison's government has promised to legislate a Religious Discrimination Act. This grew out of the Ruddock review into religious freedom after same-sex marriage was legalised. It's going through several consultation drafting processes. I've always maintained that this could be a very dangerous piece of legislation because it could turn into be a blasphemy law. And as we've seen with the Victoria's Racial and Religious Tolerance Act, who's at which religion is it primarily used to protect? It's Muslims, not Christians. And a Religious Discrimination Act, we're seeing with other pieces of legislation, has unintended consequences. What's Rise Up's position on proposed Religious Discrimination Act?
Well, we cautiously watching it right now and seeing what's the best which will come out of it. And, yeah.
Obviously, Israel Folau's sacking from Rugby Australia for his sinner's Instagram post, which came from the Bible, that certainly disturbed a lot of Christians, considering that he was obviously there were clauses in his contract that Rugby Australia claimed that they could terminate it, but he's basically been one of the more high-profile examples of why religious freedom is important. And mainstream media, they've reported on a lot of his sermons at his family church, and one of them was when he spoke about the bushfires that were ravaging New South Wales, which the media reported as were due to same-sex marriage and New South Wales legalising abortion, and you were criticised in 2009 for, as the media reported, saying that the Black Saturday bushfires were God's punishment for its abortion laws. But what did you exactly say about that?
Well, what I said was what was said exactly. The abortion laws in Victoria, when it was passed, up to birth abortion laws, it's the most cruel thing you can ever do to a child. The child is about to be born. Tomorrow the child is going to be born. Today you can abort that child. And the way the abortion is done is horrible. And when the abortion laws were put through Parliament, I had a dream. The Bible speaks of how children of God have dreams. And I am a dreamer. I have dreams. In this dream I saw the law getting passed in Victoria, and then Victoria burning. Bushfires which went out of control. So 4 months before the bushfire, I said this. I said, if this law passes, there's going to be a bushfire. It's going to be God's judgment upon the country. And lo and behold, it happened 4 months later. So of course, when the media saw the bushfires happen, they were at my office asking me, are you still standing by what you said? I said, I still stand by. And I even said it recently, I said, New South Wales passed the law. I said, New South Wales. I had a dream again. Queensland, New South Wales were burning. And I said, we have passed these laws. There's going to be major fires. And we have seen the fires. I said, instead of Allah said, I said it before you. And it's been across the country.
It's been a horrific summer.
Horrific.
It's called the Black Summer now.
That's right. It's terrible, and it's not going to get easy. We as a nation need to come back to God. And this may sound crazy, but I know God loves Australia. He loves all countries. Australia is a special place. There was no other country called the Great Southland of the Holy Spirit. Australia was called that. I have a prophetic calling in my life. A prophet in the Bible is a person who sees the future and tells it before it happens. And I have said a lot of things. The recent past I said the Donald Trump's impeachment will fail, which will be his platform to win his next election. I said the coronavirus is going to happen in China. I said the virus is going to be a disaster, but through that it's going to be a major uprising of the underground church coming above the ground in China, which is happening. So many things we have predicted. Scott Morrison's election, I predicted it 2014. God gave me another dream and he said 2020 there'll be a Christian born again Prime Minister. So with God's grace, we've been doing what God wants called us to do. All of us need to put our shoulders together and fight for our nation right now.
Obviously, your prophecy about the bushfires and, well, more recently, what Israel Folau said, they weren't well received in the media, and the reports, they get a quote from bushfire victims who say that this is insulting to us. So what's your response to that type of argument?
Well, people have the right to say what they want to say, but the fact is the fact remains is that if there's a consequence to everything that you do, and if you are not willing to pay the price for what you do, then it's a tough luck what you do. So the consequence was, the word of God says, if my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray, turn away from their wicked ways and seek my face, I forgive their sin and I will heal their land. So that's what we are calling the nation right now, to come back to Jesus. We walked away from our Christian faith. Our forefathers in this land built this country with Judeo-Christian foundations. To get back to that foundation, to get the Bible is being pushed out of schools, hotels, they're trying to push it out of the hotels. Christian education is trying to be, everything which is anti-God is happening. And we need to really get back to God. Our nation needs to come back to Jesus.
Obviously, you're following what's happening in the United States, and Donald Trump's up for re-election this year. You mentioned that Bill Clinton's sin and impeachment actually helped religious freedom. Obviously, Donald Trump, when he was a candidate, had not exactly a pure past, but he has done, in the end, a lot more for religious people than previous presidents, such as George W. Bush, for religious liberties. So obviously Donald Trump has his moral shortcomings. So I just want to get your perspective on, because it's something that a lot of Christians sort of struggled with in 2016.
I think the statement Jesus made, he has no sin, he who has no sin cast the first stone. We are all sinners, saved by grace. So is Donald Trump. That man, hats off to this guy. He's copped a lot of flack. And I'm just really blessed to know that he's still standing up. The flack that he is copped and Melania has copped, no one else has copped. And the left socialist Democrats all out to destroy him. But this guy is standing up. So we need to get behind him. We need to pray for Donald Trump and the family. We need to pray for Scott Morrison and the family. We need to pray for Boris Johnson and the family. And so Benjamin Netanyahu. I'm hoping and praying that Benjamin Netanyahu, 2nd of March, will be elected as the Prime Minister.
Early in the 21st century, when I was growing up, I was told that this century is going to be the secular postmodern century. But as we've seen in this past decade, there's been a conservative resurgence, included with that a Christian resurgence, and we've also seen over in the United States the growth of the America First movement, or the Groyper Army, the Zoomers Generation Z, led by Nick Fuentes, and he's a devout Catholic, but faith is a central focus of their philosophy, as well as putting, as the name suggests, putting the nation first, making sure that immigration is under control, and obviously opposing the increasing degeneracy in society. And obviously that's personified by what we're seeing with those drag queen story hours at public libraries, which is even here. So what you spoke about before, it's may not be happening in the pure Christian sense, but there is a cultural tide turning.
There's a cultural tide. When you push someone to a corner, ultimately they wake up. When the darkness gets darker, the smallest light starts shining bright. And I'm so excited to be alive at this time, because I think we are going to see some of the greatest actions that mankind has ever seen. Darkness will not win. The light will win. What's in darkness will be exposed through the light. And we as Christians, we are the light. We're shining our lights with Jesus. And in the name of Jesus, we will see this nation come back to, and the nation stand back to Jesus.
Even though I'm only 30 years old, I've studied modern history, and it seems to me that we're going through, a lot of people talk about dark times at the moment. The 1970s was an extremely dark period. Everyone thought the world was going to end because of overpopulation. It's sort of the same now, with people thinking the world's going to end because of climate change. And obviously there was war, there was the oil crisis, economic downturn, but then the 80s happened, which was a renaissance personified by Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher, and then by the end of the 80s the Berlin Wall came down and Eastern Europe was free. So even though past decade has been difficult, humanity always comes through.
Definitely. The 21st century, this 2020 to 2030, 21st century, we're just going to see some amazing changes take place. It's going for, what to say, when all things work together for good for those who trust in the Lord. When the evil rises up, the evil, see, the darkness will play it so bad that people will see what's the right thing to be done. For example, formerly that was just grey. If you don't know for sure what is right or what is wrong, you don't know which way to go. But if something is clearly shown, LGBTI, for example, Today people know, they can, when these guys are just not after their rights, they are after destroying the children of tomorrow. So people will wake up then. So in a way it's a blessing in disguise to see these things happen, wickedness and evil rising up so strongly. But on the side, love, joy, peace and God's grace and His strength is going to rise up, turn the tide around.
Well, I think, it's only been 2 months of the 20s, but I think we've certainly made a good start in the world, and 2019 finished excellent as well. I'd like to thank you so much, Pastor Daniel, for coming into the studio tonight. I hope I've done your life justice. We've covered everything. It's been a pleasure to speak with you, and even though I'm not a Christian myself, I certainly think a lot of the work that you're doing is for the good of Australia.
Thank you very much. And I want to take this opportunity to thank my wife and my family, also my team at Rise Up and Reformation Harvest Fire, and all the supporters across the country. Thank you very much for your support and prayer and love. Together we will win this battle. Just keep standing strong. Let's see Australia be kept Australian. And let the name of Jesus be glorified. God bless you and thank you, team.
Thank you. Well, that's the show, everyone, for tonight. Don't go anywhere because Dee Beltran Live is next up at 8:30 p.m. Melbourne time. She has got as her guest another cultural crusader, Bernard Gaynor, former ADF personnel. His main battle has been fighting a anti-vilification complaint about what he said about I can't remember the exact one, but there's been a homosexual activist who's been after him for a number of years, so that will be a must watch as well. I'll be back tomorrow night, 8:30 p.m. Melbourne time, on the Uncockables YouTube channel and D Live for another week. It'll be myself, David Hiscock, and James Fox Higgins. Thank you for everyone tonight who watched on YouTube and D Live. WilmsFront will be back Friday night, 7 p.m. Melbourne time. You can check out the podcast archive of episodes at timwilms.com. It's also got links to my own social media. I'm not on Facebook anymore, but I'm on Gab, Telegram, and also mine. So until next time, thank you so much for your time tonight.
Thanks for tuning in to WilmsFront. Visit timwilms.com or Rational Rise TV to view the archive of episodes. And keep visiting theunshackled.net to view all our shows, and to keep up with the latest real news and analysis.